You're listening to the Martin Clinic Wellness Podcast. This is the show where we bring you the best tips, tricks, and nutritional hacks to help you and your family get healthier. You will also hear what works and doesn't work, so you don't have to waste your time and money. All right, let's get started. Hello, my name is Dr. Tony Martin Jr. of the Martin Clinic, and I'm here with my dad, Dr. Tony Martin Sr. of the Martin Clinic. And we want to thank you for joining us today on this episode. And, we've took a couple weeks off doing these weekly episodes. So what we thought we would do today is get caught up a little bit in the world of nutritional research. There's been a fair amount of studies published in the last couple of weeks that we didn't get a chance to talk about or address. Not only did we take a little bit of time off on our podcast, we took a few weeks off on our Facebook Lives as well, which we normally do, by the way, Thursday mornings at around 10 o'clock. We try to do them consistently around that time, and we had a lot of great questions from the audience at that time, and we enjoyed doing it. But like I said, today, I figure we'll just kind of go through some of the, interesting studies that caught our eye over the last couple of weeks. I keep a folder on my desktop of studies. I read through a fair amount every week, and any that catch my interest, I kind of just copy and paste and put it in my folder for later. So I figure maybe we'll go through a few of those today. And the first one, I'll let you start, because one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, we talk a lot about vitamin D. We do talk a lot about vitamin D. It's one of those nutritional deficiencies that are so common, yet so easy to prevent, right? So we talk a lot about that. So anyways, what I thought we would do is then, one of the questions that we get about that is, we tell people to take about 4,000 IUs minimum. Yeah. And one of the questions we get asked all the time is like, well, my family doctor says, I should never take more than 1,000 IUs. And
well, I had a case today where a patient was in and said that they ought to be taking. I had her on 10,000 IUs, and I did it for a reason, because of her depleted immune system and that. But I said, but she said, well, I went, in the meantime, she had gone back to her doctor, and the doctor said, well, you make sure you don't take over 1,000. And again,
well, why don't you talk about that study that just got published?
Well, Mayo Clinic, okay, and they're not making any money on vitamin D, and believe me, if they could find that there was any toxicity at all in vitamin D, they said eat at very massive doses over a long period of time. And when I talk massive, they were giving some people 20, 30, 40,000 IUs of vitamin D.
And I don't even consider that massive, to be honest with you. No, but that's all right.
But they would, right?
Yeah.
And they said there was very little evidence of any toxicity. I think one patient out of thousands had an elevated serum calcium level. One.
And again, how would you necessarily even correlate that?
Well, and it's exactly right.
Yeah.
They weren't even sure that was it. But They thought that at this kind of dosing, they thought they started.
Well, I'm sure they thought they'd have to. I'm sure they bought a lot of insurance thinking people were going to drop dead.
Yeah, from vitamin D.
Liver failure and all the craziness that you hear associated with it. I'm sure that they.
And there's a couple of things to think about. Vitamin D, by the way, is absorbed in your gut. You need to have good probiotic flora, right? Like friendly bacteria, to absorb vitamin D properly. And I'm just saying that generally people are when I test in the office, I probably, much like B12, it's just vitamins that vitamin D is just something that people are chronically low in. And you're certainly not getting any vitamin D in the northern hemisphere. And the people in Florida don't get a lot of vitamin D either because they're scared of the sun. So it's very safe. We recommend a minimum of 4,000. I take 8 to 12,000 IUs every day.
Yeah, so do I, pretty much.
Especially this time of the year.
Yeah, that's pretty much
now
what
we're
I take
not going to see a lot of sun where we live. We certainly can't do any sunbathing. So,
well, let me just throw the disclaimer out there because we're going to hear about it. Mm-hmm. Again, we don't know you personally. We're just telling you what we take every day. And after talking with patients, getting their history, and then we have recommendations for them. So if you're listening, We're not telling you to take 4,000 IUs every day. We're telling you what we take every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Vitamin D Council, which will tell you what to take every day, will tell you to be taking a minimum of 4 to 5.
Well, the Vitamin D Council showed that the math, again, and we've talked about this before, but it's important to state again, because the math that they came up with, the RDA, was wrong. It was miscalculated. They've shown that. They've written about it. They've petitioned it to get changed, and it should get changed because they've shown that the math was incorrectly done. It was just bad math.
And, one of the things that vitamin D really helps with is something that we talk about a lot here. How does it help the body to take vitamin D? It lowers your inflammation. So vitamin D is very anti-inflammatory. And, we talk about inflammation all the time, and its damages to blood vessels and healthy cells. Inflammation is a deadly, deadly force within the body.
Well, latest studies have shown that inflammation is the best marker for, all-cause mortality. Yeah. So anything that lowers inflammation.
Yeah. So I always tell people, well, look, in heart disease, like you might be worried about cholesterol. I'm worried about inflammation. I want you to get your inflammation markers down. And that's why we're so dogmatic when it comes to food. Like we're one-track pony. Like get the carbs down, increase your fat and protein, and that'll get your inflammation down. Vitamin D gets your inflammation down. Omega-3 gets your inflammation down, right? Cut your sugars out. That gets your inflammation down. So,
now,
it's amazing.
Just before we go on, I don't know if you heard the story of that MD down in Australia who is no longer allowed to give dietary advice because he was telling people to cut out sugar.
Isn't that crazy?
So here you have a medical professional who's no longer allowed to give nutritional advice because he was telling patients to cut out sugar.
Imagine.
And I mean, it's 2016. And it just came out maybe, less than a month ago. It was like a kangaroo court. Here's an MD for anything cannot tell them to cut down sugar. He'll lose his license. What kind of crazy world do we live in where a medical doctor can't tell their patients to cut out sugar because it goes against big pharma, obviously. I mean, who else would care? I mean, really, who else cares?
And, if you did nothing else.
If you, literally, if a person literally just cut out sugar from their diets,
well, you know what?
It would take care.
It'd be like saying to a smoker, if you don't do anything else, just quit smoking.
Yep.
You get the same results by saying, cut the sugar out
But
of your diet.
he's been completely silenced.
Wow,
he can't write about it. And he had a fairly popular blog. He can't write about it. He can't talk about it. He can't tell his patients to eat less Fruit Loops. Like, it's insane. Like, he can't literally.
I mean, we live in a crazy world.
I don't understand. Like, imagine, and again, which really tells you who's pulling the strings. There was another funny thing. The Dietetic Association of Australia, they're a little crazy because they're going after Dr. Noakes as well, who's a AAA researcher, and he's a big Banting guy, which is a high fat, low carb, and they're trying to get him silenced as well, right? And what's interesting is that they anytime they put out a message, they almost should say brought to you by Coke or brought to you by Pepsi or brought to you by Kellogg's or brought to you by, because they're corporate sponsors. It's like a list. Anyways, it's just, to me, when I saw that, anyways, that's a little off topic. But when I read that this doctor was no longer allowed to tell his patients to cut out sugar, how do you even render that ruling in a professional setting and not think how stupid it sounds when they read the judgment? We find that you are no longer to talk about sugar, no longer to come up with any nutritional advice whatsoever. Anyway, so that's out there. That's the battle that is out there for healthcare professionals when they break the traditional mold. Because you got to remember, over the summer, that study came out that showed that insulin treatment on type 2 diabetics does nothing to improve anything with mortality. It just basically they know it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So if a doctor would do anything other than that to get them better, they get in trouble for it because it's not the standard of care, because the standard of care is insulin. But anyways, that's another topic for another time. But anyways, just you brought up sugar, and it's just one of those things that just kind of, it triggered me, got me angry. So, all right. Now, you had mentioned the gut, and on the gut, another study came out that is real. I find, again, now we've been talking about the gut-brain axis, the link for a long time. And it's time to stop thinking of our body parts as individual organs that are fighting for their own survival. It doesn't work that way. It's like we talk about this a lot with bone health. Your bones are not an independent system. If your muscles aren't healthy, your bones aren't going to be healthy. If your gut isn't healthy, your bones aren't going to be healthy. It's the same thing with your brain. If your gut isn't healthy, it's going to affect your brain. But a study came out, which is really fascinating. And what they found is that a protein that actually gets clumped up or aggregates in the brain, so it clumps up in the brain, and it leads to Parkinson's. So they found this protein that gathers together, it aggregates in the brain, and it plays a role in Parkinson's, was found to travel
from the gut
to the brain.
Wow.
Now, that's big. An earlier study showed that a lot of people with Parkinson's had a fair amount of fungus in their brain.
Yeah.
So they're starting to see a real connection, right? Now, what's interesting is that when it comes to leaky gut, which, essentially that's what happened, obviously, where's it come from? It doesn't necessarily mean, leaky gut's a spectrum. And what we mean by that is that, some people may get digestive symptoms. Other people won't. They could have leaky gut, but they may have brain symptoms. They may have skin symptoms. They may have joint symptoms, but they may have no digestive issues whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that the gut isn't leaking into because the symptoms are a spectrum. But what we're starting to see when it comes to a lot of these chronic brain illnesses, and, serious ones, Alzheimer's, dementia, now Parkinson's, a lot of this, for not everybody, but for a lot of people, may originate in the gut. And you think of all the things that happen in our lifetime nowadays that absolutely destroy the lining of our intestines, which basically protects the gut, that filter. It's not surprising. It really isn't surprising, right? Yeah. So, but anyways, that's a study that came out that I found interesting. That, this protein that gets clumped up in the brain actually travels from the gut to the brain. That was one study that was done. Now, so that's interesting. And then on that same note, another study was published, and it basically what they did is they gave people with Alzheimer's probiotic supplements for 12 weeks. Now, I don't know anything about the types of probiotics they gave them, the strains, and all that kind of stuff, because like anything else, there are some stuff out there that are better than others. But regardless, they gave them 12 weeks of probiotics. Yep. And what they found these are patients with already have Alzheimer's, and they found in pretty much every one of them improved cognition, and it lowered inflammatory markers in their body. So again, how in the world would probiotic supplementation help your brain? And unfortunately, it's a connection that so many people still don't understand. When you take probiotics, you're taking it for your brain, your skin, your joints, your heart, your sinuses. Probiotics is ultimately, they really are a multivitamin. They are the new multivitamin of our time now, because it should be something that you take every day. It helps you get, as you mentioned, if you have dysbiosis, which is more bad than good, you are not metabolizing vitamin D properly. You're not metabolizing a lot of your B vitamins properly.
You're not picking B12 up.
So
it's an impossibility. You might be eating it, but you're not getting it.
Which is one of the reasons. The list is so many.
This is, I don't know if I said this on another podcast before or not. I might have. But I said, if you let the Martin Clinic go into every senior home, give us a chance for 1 month.
Yeah.
Here's what we'd bring with us. We'd bring probiotic, vitamin D, B12. And we like our Navital.
Yeah.
But okay, let's take 3 in. They say, okay, but you can only take 3 supplements in. I tell you the difference because they're all low in vitamin D, 100%. They're all low in B12, 100%, and they all have leaky gut. And they're taking every medication to go to sleep, to get up, to go to the bathroom, to, you name it, for pain, blah, 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 right? And probiotic, B12, vitamin D. And watch how much better people get. And you got that leaky gut, leaky brain axis that we talk about all the time. And that is such an important thing because, again, when you look at cognitive function, people, one of their biggest fears in society today is losing. And it's amazing. I don't know if it's just been the last month, but I've heard people like, what? Like they've already started 65, 66, 67, whatever, that they've got early dementia or early signs of Alzheimer's.
It's an epidemic, and it's only going to get worse. Well, I mean, we talked about this previously in an older episode not too long ago, actually, how dementia and Alzheimer's are now the leading cause of death in England. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's not becoming an epidemic. It already is there, and it's only going to get worse because the brain, it's complicated, but yet it seems like the gut plays a big role. Diet plays, obviously, food, like, insulin plays a massive role, and the lack of activity. Like we have a lack of weightlifting epidemic as well. I mean, again, you mentioned if we can go into a senior home with 3 supplements, and then if we could bring in a trainer who can get them just starting to lift weights, even just start, it's amazing what that does for the brain. But yeah, so anyways, we're already out of time. We just, again, kind of covered a couple of, there's a few other studies that were out there. We could definitely spend a line talking about it seems like every month a new study comes out on heartburn medication. This
an interesting one.
Yeah, they cause strokes, right? We already know it causes, if you're on heartburn medication for a long time, you're going to break a bone as an adult. We know that.
You're not absorbing, again, here we go, any fat-soluble vitamin or B12, even water-soluble vitamin B12. You guaranteed you don't have enough of that. You won't have enough vitamin D. Everything needs to be perfect almost. You got acid reflux and, like you say, osteoporosis. You're not, even the minerals, you're not getting half of them. You're not absorbing them anymore. You're not even absorbing the calcium that you would get in your diet. And, when you're taking, these acid reductors, right?
Yeah, they just shut off the beta hydrogen chloride. They just shut off the pumps, right? It's a big industry. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money being made.
What you want, and take.
They are definitely in the top class of prescribed medication.
The purple pill, right?
Yeah, I mean it's, they'd rather. Yeah, again, we can. Unfortunately, we could talk about that for quite a while, but again, as the doctor in Australia is not allowed to say anymore, just cut out sugar, cut out the carbs, and it's amazing how much better the heartburn gets. But anyways, we want to thank you for joining us today. If you like the information that you hear, we'd really appreciate if you were able to leave us a review on iTunes. That really helps us get this message out to a lot more people. Also, if you don't get our newsletters yet, we'd ask you to go to our website, martinclinic.com, and just sign up for our free newsletters. We talk about a lot of these studies throughout the week, and we try to break it down as simple as possible, make it as interesting as possible, because quite frankly, a lot of the research out there is boring, not that practical. So we kind of weed through a lot of that for you and just put out the stuff that we find interesting. So again, you can get a lot of that just from joining our newsletters. Also, if you want to get a hold of us, you can hit us up on Facebook. And again, Thursday mornings we try to do Facebook Lives as well, where you can come on there and ask us questions. We get to a lot of questions, or as many as we can, in the 30 minutes or so that we're doing that. So again, we want to thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in again next week. You've been listening to the Martin Clinic Wellness Podcast, brought to you by martinclinic.com. We are truly thankful that you took the time out of your busy day to listen. Talk soon.